Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
We've talked before about how there's confusion regarding marijuana usage in America. Some states have legalized it for different reasons. Some states have not legalized it, apparently. And of course, the federal government still says it's illegal everywhere under federal law. So the question then becomes, what happens when these different laws come into conflict? And I've heard from people who said before that, what if I have a medicinal marijuana card? So my state considers it medicine, and I go into a state that does not have medicinal marijuana. What happens then? What if you're in a state that allows it for recreational use, and you go into a state that doesn't? So there's a lot of conflicts, but there's something strange that just happened here in Michigan, and Tony passed the story along to me and said, Steve, this is an odd one. And it's reported in MLive, which is a Michigan news source that specializes in local news in Michigan. And John Agar wrote the story regarding a Michigan medical marijuana seller gets prison time because the judge says federal law has not changed. Out of Grand Rapids, Michigan, the former owner of medical marijuana dispensaries in several Michigan cities was sentenced Tuesday to nearly 16 years in federal prison. Danny Trevino of Lansing, who had Hydro World dispensaries in Grand Rapids, Flint, Jackson, Lansing, and elsewhere, had managed to stay out of trouble under state law over the years, but was just convicted under federal law. So this is one of those things where people say, well, the state allows it, I'm going to do it. Feds say, nope, still a no-no. U.S. District Judge Paul Maloney said states are changing marijuana laws across the country. Certainly it's true, but federal law has not changed. Trevino sought the statutory minimum sentence of 5 years in prison, but Maloney instead gave him 15 years and 8 months, which was the low end of the sentencing guidelines, which range from 188 to 235 months. And you can do the math on that. That's almost 20 years. The sentence upset several family members and pro-marijuana activists who attended the sentencing in Grand Rapids. Detroit resident Richard Clement said, "What you saw is a travesty." He said it was difficult to reconcile what he called a harsh sentence in a state where marijuana is legal. He and others think that Trevino was targeted. Now, Trevino has operated dispensaries since 2010, and he was convicted in an August jury trial of 10 felony charges, including conspiracy to manufacture, distribute, and possess marijuana, and maintaining a drug-involved premises. And those are all under federal statutes that apply everywhere in America. He was not allowed to use as a defense that the state has a medical marijuana law which allows these things. Nonetheless, the government said he acted outside of the boundaries of the state medical marijuana law, but his attorney says that that is a fallacy. So he says Trevino was successful in challenging state complaints after he'd been arrested and the subject of several search warrants. According to his attorney, Trevino was arrested in April of 2014 in Grand Rapids for delivery or manufacture of marijuana and maintaining a drug house, but those charges were dropped a month later. He fought forfeiture of funds seized by police that were ultimately returned by state courts. So think about this. He had money seized under a forfeiture statute. He got the money back. No one gets their money back almost no one. So if he got his money back, you got to wonder about this. Trevino's businesses have been raided 16 times, according to the government. He provided the state with store records and tax records that showed his businesses brought in nearly $3 million. And Bostic, the attorney, says he thought he was legal. He said his client, whose previous drug convictions prevented him from being a caregiver, oversaw the operation. He said that every single sale of medical marijuana at his business would have been legal under laws in 33 states and the District of Columbia because they all allow medical or recreational marijuana. Trevino earlier had told MLive, "How could I not have been in compliance if I was acquitted and found not guilty in the state courts? We were winning and they didn't charge us, so we kept going." Assistant U.S. Attorney Daniel McGraw said Trevino knew he acted illegally under federal law. He called Trevino defiant, unrepentant, and undeterred from committing the current federal crimes. After federal investigators used a search warrant at one of his locations in 2016, Trevino posted on Facebook, and again, an attorney would have suggested he not do this, "I guess Hydro World is illegal. LOL. Okay." McGraw said Trevino acted as though marijuana was always legal, even though it was legalized in 2018 for recreational use in Michigan. Trevino was told time and time again that it was illegal, and Your Honor, he simply didn't care. He didn't care, he kept operating. The judge said his concern was Trevino's conduct under federal law. I fully recognize that the landscape has changed in many states, Maloney said. The fact is, marijuana is a Schedule I controlled substance. He noted that Congress has eliminated the mandatory minimum prison sentence for crack cocaine, but has not acted on marijuana. So, crack cocaine, marijuana, though, that stuff will get you. He said Trevino had to know he was in the radar screens of federal authorities. The judge ordered Trevino to serve 4 years on supervised release once his prison term ends, and he was fined $11,000. So there's a lot to unpack in that story, as I like to say. I just said it now. But the real upshot here is that there's state laws, there's federal laws. And in Michigan, you've got both. And it's possible under Michigan state law to be acting perfectly legally and for the feds to say, but you're violating federal law. Now, those kinds of things don't often happen. Okay, there's often overlap on the laws. I had someone point out the other day, several people pointed out the other day, when I was talking about the man who was arrested for bank robbery in New York, and that he was being charged in the state courts with armed robbery, and that a state judge had been upset that he was supposed to let the guy go with no bond posted. And he refused to let the guy do that without bond, and got overturned on appeal. But several people said, why is this guy even in state court? It's a federal offense to rob a bank. And it is. It is. And so if the guy had been charged in federal court with bank robbery, it would be a whole different set of rules that apply to the guy. But that's an interesting case only because armed robbery is a state crime. Bank robbery is a federal crime, which means that if you rob a bank, then it could be either of those could charge you. So in this situation, you have a unusual disconnect where medical marijuana or recreational marijuana are legal in many states because there are no state laws against it. Okay? But there's a federal law covering the whole country that addresses marijuana like it addresses many other drugs and says you can't manufacture, you can't make it, you can't distribute it, you can't sell it, blah, 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 blah. And so a lot of people were operating under the assumption that the state says it's okay, it is now legal. And right now, this story should send shivers down the spine of every single person who operates businesses like this, not just in Michigan, but in any state where it's been made legal by the state. Because making it legal by the state doesn't make it legal by the feds, as noted, because this man now is going to prison. So that's the scary part, and it's a bit of confusion. And yeah, he's going to get nearly 16 years in prison, and he could have gotten more. And he's 47 years old. And the weird part is that he had been charged with state crimes and acquitted. So I know that's going to seem unfair to a lot of people, and I'm not saying it's fair. I'm the lawyer. I'm the person who brings you the news. Don't blame me. Don't shoot me. I'm just the messenger. But I think a lot of people right now are going to look at this and go, wait a second, I could go to prison for 15 or 20 years despite the fact that there's no state laws against it. Well, the absence of a state law doesn't override the existence of a federal law. So I do think that the tide is changing on this. I think that the pendulum is swinging the other direction. I think more and more Americans are coming to the conclusion that marijuana is not that bad. It shouldn't be classified in the same groups as heroin and crystal meth and whatever. And so I think that as more and more people come to believe that and openly say that eventually more and more states will legalize it, but we obviously need to fix at the federal level to get that law there to go alongside the state laws and so that they all kind of are in harmony with each other. That's the hand signal for harmony. think I saw it in a musical once. So there you go. Story out of M Live. Tony passed it along. Thank you very much. Questions, comments, put them below. Otherwise, talk to you later. Bye-bye.